I kept the coffee fresh for ghosts and truckers, and on good nights the ghosts tipped better. Hanson's diner sat where Highway 46 narrowed to a single honest lane and held its breath for a mile. Folks around Ash Hollow called that stretch the Quiet Mile because even summer crickets fell silent by sundown. Even the old F-150 mufflers whispered across it. Even arguments dropped to a murmur the moment tires touched its blacktop. You didn't shout on the Quiet Mile. You didn't sing. You didn't test what listened. I worked nights. The neon open sign buzzed like a lazy wasp over the window, and the chrome napkin dispensers kept catching my face in 100 small wrong angles. A habit. I pressed them down so the metal didn't show the room behind me, just in case. We'd learned little precautions before we learned long division. "Top me off, Joe," Mr. F. Henley asked without looking up from his pie. F had been old since I was a kid, old in the way fishing line is old, frayed at the edges but somehow stronger for it. "Fresh pot," I said, and gave him the good stuff from the brown-handled carafe. I could hear Sheriff Darla Kincaid's voice in the corner booth, low and steady, warming a sentence before letting it go. She was counseling a couple from Madison who'd pulled in with a flat 10 miles back. Darla didn't wear her badge off-duty, but she couldn't take it off either. The bell above the door jangled, and every head lifted like in church when the hymn changes key. The man who stepped in had the look you can spot from 2 zip codes away, a man here for a story. 30-ish, cheerful beard, headphones looped around his neck, camera with a matte box the size of a cereal bowl. The gear wasn't for photos, it was for proof. "Evening," he said, voice bright. "Open late kitchen." "Kitchen never sleeps," I said, because ritual mattered and because Hank would grumble if I promised anything else. He slid onto a stool at the counter and set the camera down like a baby he wanted people to admire. "Miles Rays," he said, offering a hand. "I do long-form audio, rural myths, legend, things that go click in the corn." I took his hand because refusing a handshake is a sentence in this county. "Joe Walker, coffee, please, and whatever your best burger is." I polled my listeners on the drive. Apparently Wisconsin is 50% cheese and 50% beef. "Sounds undercounted," I said. He laughed. I poured. He watched the stream arc and settle. People like him always did, waiting for the picture to focus on what they wanted to see. I tucked a menu under the sugar caddy anyway. He looked past me at the window as if waiting for the town to enter on cue. "I'm actually here for, well, you probably know what I'm here for, the mile." I didn't look at the window. "Fries with the burger." "Absolutely," he said. "And this is going to sound weird, but does anyone ever hear it from in here?" "Hear what?" I asked, though my skin already knew. "The hum," he said softly, like a kid trying out a swear. "Subscribers send me clips sometimes. Low frequency, almost musical. It's probably infrastructure resonance off wind turbines or the high school's HVAC. But the pattern, man, down the blacktop recordings, it's consistent." "That'll be a double," I called to the kitchen hatch. Hank grunted approval, which meant he'd decided the stranger wasn't trouble yet. Miles kept talking because silence made people like him nervous. "You live here long?" "Long enough," I said. He nodded at the big hand-lettered sign near the pie case. "Rule #1, no feet on the mile after sundown." "That theme," he said, "is that a bit tourist thing?" "County ordinance," Sheriff Darla said from the booth without looking up. Darla's hair was the color of storm clouds over alfalfa fields. "Pay attention to signs when you drive at night." Miles's eyes brightened like he'd found the first breadcrumb. "Oh, are you the sheriff?" I am when I am, she said. Great, I'd love to sit down later and… You won't, she said, still warm but with iron under it. You'll eat your burger, then you'll go to the motel where Janice will give you a coupon for pancakes. Then you'll wake up, drive back to Madison, and tell your listeners this county is boring. You could save me the trip, he said, grinning. Tell me why people keep posting about your quiet mile. Why the phone service dies right there. Why a town this size has mirror covers in the hardware store. Why my DMs are jammed with ask about the elk. F's fork made a small cold sound on the plate. He looked at me, not at Miles. So did Darla. There is a moment in a story when the storyteller chooses whether the next sentence buys peace or buys trouble. I didn't choose. The room did. The neon flickered. The napkin dispenser flashed the window in my peripheral like a lighthouse. Hank slid a plate onto the pass-through window with a practiced thump, and I used the movement to take one breath too many. Fries, I said. Extra salt, ketchup's fresh. Miles touched the camera, fingertips grazing the controls like a talisman. I got a tip to ask for Joe Walker by name, he said gently. Said you know the rules better than anyone. My brother's name, Casey, moved through the back of the diner the way wind tries doors. I didn't let it in. People tell stories to feel safer, I said. Feeling safe and being safe aren't the same. Do you feel safe? He asked. No, I said. I feel at work. Darla smiled into her coffee. F made the soft old man sound that means a point was scored politely. Miles turned a ring on his lens, watching the world go shallow. Look, he said, dropping the showman a notch. Off the record, Scout's honor. What do people actually believe about that mile of road? Not what you tell tourists. What your grandmother told you. Hank coughed in the kitchen. The couple in Darla's booth looked anywhere but at us. Somewhere in the corn out past the Mobile station, a sound like a slow exhale moved north, and the fluorescent tubes over booth 7 buzzed in sympathy. I wrote on a diner napkin because that's where we write things we can't take back. I wrote 5 short lines, the way I'd been taught to say them. I slid the napkin across the counter and put my palm on it before he could read. 1. You never set foot on the quiet mile after sundown. If you're on it, you leave it. 2. If someone calls your name from the corn, you do not answer. 3. If you see the pale elk, you do not look at its eyes. 4. You leave nothing and take nothing. Not rocks, not feathers, not the bright glass. 5. If the mile hums, you cover the mirrors and you stay inside until morning. He stared at the napkin. This is perfect, he whispered. It's not content, I said. It's instructions. Has anyone tested them? He asked, trying to sound casual. You know, as a way to understand why people believe. I do a lot of myth debunk work with respect. Respect doesn't mean anything after dark, F said mildly. Respect is a daytime word. Miles glanced at the window again, the neon now steady. He inhaled slow. He had a good podcast voice. Easy on the ear. The kind that makes people confess things to their phones. Here's a weird thing, he said finally, as if we were co-conspirators. My great-aunt lived in Marathon County. Heard her stories growing up. They had a quiet road too, different rules, but one overlapped. He tapped the napkin where the 5th line was. Cover the mirrors. Lots of places have rivers, Darla said. Doesn't mean it's all one river. Still, he said, patterns are interesting. I poured him more coffee even though he hadn't drunk any. He lifted his mug like a prop. I'm planning to do a live field piece tonight, he said, light and breezy. The show's better when my listeners feel like they are there. I'll walk the mile at sunset, just sunset, not after. I'll set mics in the ditch, see if the hum's persistent. If I hear anything weird, I'll get clean audio. You won't, Darla said. "You don't know that," he said, so polite it could cut. He smiled, and in the reflection in the chrome I watched how the smile didn't reach the room behind him. "But if what you believe is true, my audience will leave with the same message. Don't walk, don't answer, don't look. It could help, right? Turn the internet into a megaphone for your rules." Hank rang the bell hard enough to make everyone jump. The burger arrived bleeding and perfect. I slid it to Miles and set the napkin on top of the plate like a blessing. He lifted it by two corners and read the rules again while the fries steamed. "You wrote bright glass," he said. "Specific." "Specificity is free," I said. Outside, a pickup rumbled by, taillights winking. The diner's door chimed once, then a second time without opening. Darla stopped talking. F's fork hovered an inch above Blueberry. I reached behind me and turned the little brass radio knob to WMEC and let an old Springsteen track fill the edges where silence tried to creep in. The song didn't start, just the faint hiss of a tuner finding nothing. "Storm coming?" Miles asked, oblivious. "Always," F said. He ate in earnest then, as if hunger could be proof. He asked small-town questions. The high school mascot, Huskies, whether the grocery still canned in August, it did. Whether anybody ever moved away for good, they did, and they came back in boxes, too. He was good at being friendly. You have to be good at something if you want to survive on air for an hour at a time. He paid in cash, tipped City Generous, and left his card tucked beneath the napkin like a deal. The card had a stylized ear on it and the words Miles Ray's audio documents. On the back, hand-printed, "Sunsets at 7:14. Stream starts 7:05. Come by if you want to hear the truth." He drew a smiley face, a hostage note trying to look like a postcard. "Don't," Darla said when I reached for the card again. "He'll be gone tomorrow." "He'll be gone tonight if he's stupid," F said. "He's not stupid," I said, angry at a man I'd known an hour, angry at how the world makes arrogance look brave. "He's practiced. Practiced men die same as foolish ones," F said. He put a 10 on the counter next to his check. "Cover your mirrors, Joe. Hum's been low all day." "Don't start," I said, but my hand found the little roll of painter's tape I kept under the register anyway. Darla waited until Miles had gone, until his car in the lot turned east instead of west, until the brake lights dwindled. Then she slid out of the booth and joined me at the counter, elbows down like we were high schoolers doing homework on a Wednesday. "How bad?" I asked. "You know how bad," she said. "I'll swing by the motel, make sure Janice doesn't give him directions if he asks you for help again." "I'll smile and say pancakes," I said. We listened to the radio fail to find a station. The neon sign hummed like an old book whispered. Out past the mobile, the quiet mile breathed in and out like a vast slow lung, and if you'd never lived here you would have called it wind. Darla finally said, "I'll put Nash and Cooper at either end of the mile until midnight. Not on the asphalt, ditch side, high beam to the tree line. We'll call Red Cedar if it turns." "You think it'll turn?" I asked. "It always turns," she said and left. I closed at 9. The motel called to say no rooms left, which was a lie. Janice did that when her gut spoke. I taped brown paper over the little framed mirror in the hallway because it had a way of acting like a window on nights when I forgot to. I wiped down the pie case and double-checked the back door chain. Hank whistled tunelessly to drown out the frequencies he pretended not to hear. At 7:02 my phone pinged a link. Live. The quiet mile at sundown. The thumbnail was Miles's face under a sky the color of an old bruise. I told myself not to tap. I tapped. The chat waterfall was already daring him to say Bloody Mary into the corn, to clap twice if he heard a ghost, to follow any voice that knew his middle name. Audio check, he said into the camera, walking backward so the road filled the frame. I'm in Ash Hollow, Wisconsin, small town with a big story, a stretch the locals call the Quiet Mile. They have rules, I'm not here to break them. He grinned. The chat spammed skulls and popcorn. I'm here to understand them. If they are protective, cool, we'll amplify. If they're just cautionary folkways, we'll show how folklore protects communities even when the monsters are just human. The live counter ticked upward, 2,000, 500, 11,000. He held up a diner napkin in the frame. My handwriting looked strange at that scale. These are the rules as given, he said, and read them. He didn't mock. He didn't have to. The camera mocked for him. He set the napkin carefully in the gravel at the lip of the ditch like a votive offering. The chat exploded with "new" and "do it" and "bro." He laughed once softly, the way people laugh in churches when they are not sure they should have come. Okay, he said. Sunset in 10. I'm stepping onto the mile now. I am not after sundown. Don't clip this out of context. I turned the radio up. The radio offered me a perfect, generous silence. Miles kept a running patter. Temperature dropped 3 degrees in the last minute, but that could be the sun. Asphalt radiative cooling, you know. Microphones in the ditch for LF capture. And that's glass. The shot bobbed as he crouched. He held up a shard that glowed deep lake blue even in the dusk. It looked like slag glass, a bottle melted into a petal. It looked like all the summer afternoons my mother warned me not to touch the pretty things in the ditch that weren't for us. It's beautiful, he said and slipped it into his pocket. I didn't know I'd stood up until my thighs hit the counter. Hank was saying something from the kitchen hatch, but my ears had gone stovepipe. The chat slowed, then set like concrete. Put IT back. On screen, the corn leaves on the north side of the mile stopped moving even though the south side still whispered. A low note bloomed in my floorboards and turned the napkin dispenser mirror into a tiny, trembling pond. Audio capture is showing something, Miles said, voice thin. That's a perfect sine wave. That's actually kind of. He stopped. On my screen he looked left, then right like a man at a crosswalk. His mouth shaped a word that didn't leave his throat. Joe, he said, not to the audience, into his mic, into my night. Joe Walker. Every letter of my name got up and walked around the diner on new legs. Don't. I told the phone, which is not a person. Don't say my name. He said, you said never answer if. And from the corn, a voice that had been a boy and that had become a story said, Joe. I didn't answer. I couldn't breathe. The hum in the floor rose 1 note higher, and the napkin with the rules I'd written began to tremble on the counter as if it wanted to leave. On screen, Miles smiled a scared smile, the kind you wear when a joke goes on 1 beat too long. Okay, he said to his listeners. Okay, we're going to take a beat. He swallowed. We're going to be smart. The sun went out of the sky the way a pilot light goes out, soft, then gone. The chat became a funeral of emojis. Miles stood very still and raised the camera, and for a single frame the lens caught something white between 2 rows, too tall to be deer, too narrow to be cow, with eyes that reflected like lakes at night. The stream cut to static that sounded like teeth. The neon sign over the window clicked once and stayed dark. I pressed both palms flat on the counter because I didn't trust my knees. I said aloud, cover mirrors. Hank was already in the hallway, taping paper over the glass like a medic wrapping a wound. I moved to the little bathroom and pulled the shade down over the medicine cabinet without looking at my own eyes. The radio finally found a station and delivered exactly nothing. Behind me, the bell on the diner door chimed once like a coin dropped in a deep well. "Closed," I said, because the mouth says what the bones remember. "We're closed." The bell chimed again, though the door never moved. My phone buzzed on the counter with a new notification from the stream I couldn't watch. A single word appeared, sent to my inbox by an account with no avatar and the right name. "Home," it read. The lights overhead took a breath. Across town, 1,000 hands reached for tape and salt. The mile began to hum for real, and Ash Hollow did what it always did when the world that isn't the world pressed its face to the glass. We followed the rules. Miles always claimed he wasn't the believer type. He had the equipment, the training, the journalistic detachment. But out here on Joe's County Road, asphalt splitting the endless fields, even he admitted the place had weight. He set his motion-triggered cameras first. One on the corner of the abandoned mailbox, another strapped to a crooked fence post, a third tucked low in the ditch where cattails swayed in the October breeze. He narrated softly into his lapel mic, like he always did for field notes. "Miles Donovan, Site 1, Pine County, 9:14 p.m. Motion cams placed north, south, and ditch side. Temperature 44. Wind light from the west. Rule set pending verification." The rule set. Joe had repeated them over coffee like scripture. Don't step off the asphalt after dark. Don't answer if the field calls your name. Don't take anything that wasn't yours. Don't touch the glass. Miles had half smiled. He'd written rules like that down in Kentucky, in Nevada, in little desert towns where people swore the hills hummed. Every town had its own list. Now, kneeling in the ditch mud, he saw it. A shard of glass, bright as bottled ocean, wedged between weeds. Not beer brown, not Coke clear, this was vivid blue, like melted sky hardened into a blade. It caught his headlamp and scattered light across the ditch. He muttered into the mic. "Object recovered. Blue glass shard, approx. 2 inches. Doesn't match local litter profile." And despite Joe's rules echoing in his head, he pocketed it, quick, almost guilty. The ditch camera clicked on. The red LED winked. He adjusted the angle and stood brushing mud from his jeans. Above, the corn rustled, though no wind moved. Back at the hood of his SUV, Miles scrolled his recorder. He wanted ambient sound before midnight. The waveform jumped immediately. Static. Then something threaded inside it, too human to ignore. A whisper. Not his name, not Joe's, but another name Joe had said once in a tone that carried weight, Caleb, and then clearer. "Joe, it's Caleb, help me." Miles froze, the recorder warm in his palm. He checked the time stamp. No interference source. The road stretched empty in both directions. His scalp prickled. "Joe," he muttered. "What the hell didn't you tell me?" He replayed. The whisper came again, layered, like multiple mouths shaping one memory. "Help me, Joe." The boy's tone was wet with pleading. The blue glass burned cold in his pocket. Miles swore under his breath, swung the mic back up, and dictated shakily. First anomaly captured. Whisper male, young, claims identity, Caleb, reported as Joe's deceased brother. Audio contamination or unknown. He stopped, because then the other sound started. At first he thought it was a truck, some far-off semi rumbling down county line, but no lights approached. The hum deepened, low and steady, vibrating through the soles of his boots. The asphalt itself seemed to resonate. And in the cornfields on both sides, the stalks began to tilt. not with wind but with intent, every row bowing toward the road as though the whole crop had been waiting for the hum to start. Miles' cameras caught it. The ditch lens flashed as the corn leaned closer, closer. And Miles, suddenly very aware of the blue glass in his pocket, realized he'd just broken something more serious than local superstition. He clutched the recorder, breath shallow as the hum rolled stronger, rattling the SUV windows. The stalks bent low like worshippers, and from somewhere deep in the ditch Mike's feed came the whisper again, louder now. "Joe, come see." Miles went live just before the sun touched the corn line, his phone clipped to a chest rig, red light blinking. The chat filled instantly, regulars, rubberneckers, locals who knew better but couldn't look away. Pine County Ghost Feed, he'd titled it, and within minutes the viewer count ticked past 5,000. He angled the lens toward the road, the field stretching on either side like a stage waiting for a cue. The comments scrolled fast. "Stay till dark. Bet you won't last an hour. Ask about the rules again. Touch the ditch glass." Miles smirked into the camera, trying to keep his voice level professional. "Locals say you don't enter the fields after sunset, you don't answer voices, and you don't look at the pale elk. That's 3 separate rules. Tonight, we're going to test them." The sky bruised purple, the asphalt reflecting thin veins of gold. His ditch camera's feed flickered on his monitor, static heavy, but catching motion deeper in the rows. Corn leaves shifted though the air was still. He narrated into his mic. 9:02 p.m. Chat, you can see it. The corn's moving without wind, possible animal disturbance. And then the camera caught it. A shape emerged between stalks, taller than a man, paler than bone, antlers stretching like frostbitten trees. The elk's body didn't glow, didn't shimmer. It simply was in a way that bent the eye. Miles whispered without meaning to, "Jesus." The elk turned its head toward the road. The lens zoomed, unsteady with his breath. Its eyes filled the frame, vast, liquid, reflecting not light but depth, dark lakes under a dead sky. For an instant, Miles swore he saw stars ripple inside them, whole galaxies spiraling slow. Chat erupted. "Bro, WTF, is that real? It's looking at you. Don't stare, don't stare." Miles' jaw clenched. The third rule: don't look directly at the white deer or elk or whatever the locals called it. But the view count spiked higher, 10,000, 15. His hands shook, but he forced the lens to stay on the creature. In the SUV cab, Joe's radio crackled. A burst of static, then Sheriff Mitchell's voice cut through, firm and low. "Joe, lock your doors, do not go out." Joe froze in the driver's seat, eyes locked on the dashboard scanner. She pressed the receiver, whispering back, "Why? What's happening?" The answer came jagged. "The elk's showing itself. Don't let him say your name." On the road, Miles laughed nervously into the mic, trying to reclaim authority. "You see this, right? Unreal. Chat, I think I just proved the rule wrong." The elk didn't move, its eyes swallowed everything. And then the mistake. "Joe," Miles said, grinning at the stream. "Joe, you watching this, you should have told me sooner." The field answered. From the corn, in Joe's own trembling voice, came a reply. "Yes, Miles, I'm here." By the time full dark set in, Pine Harbor looked like it had dropped back 50 years. Porch lights were doused. Curtains pinned tight. Mirrors faced the wall. Every doorframe glittered faintly with iron nails hammered just above the lintels, and salt-streaked white lines across stoops and thresholds. Joe helped her mother drag an old cheval mirror down to the basement, the glass shrouded in a bedsheet. The radio on the counter spat bursts of static between Sheriff Mitchell's orders. "Salt the windows twice. No open panes. Deputies will pass every block. If you hear a knock after 10, don't answer. The hum had grown steady, threaded into the bones of the town. Light bulbs jittered with it. Power surged, died, then came back thinner each time, like the grid itself was breathing with the cornfields. On Main Street, Darla Reyes, deputy chief and mean as a bent nail, walked her patrol with 2 rookies. Their rifles were loaded with silver rounds, though both men knew metal only bought you time. She checked every storefront twice, chalked sigils over locks, then barked into her radio. Block 4 secure, perimeter holding. Behind her, shop signs flickered, humming in tune with the unseen thing under the asphalt. Jo sat cross-legged by her grandmother's Bible, phone on the quilt beside her. She tried not to think of Miles' grin when he'd said her name on stream. She tried not to think of how wrong her own voice had sounded when it answered back. She failed. The chat feed still buzzed on Miles' channel, thousands of strangers typing nonsense prayers and dares. His camera view had gone jumpy, static flooding every few seconds. The elk's eyes had stared last she saw lakes within lakes. Then the feed hiccuped. The picture dissolved into snow, and sound came through, wet, rhythmic clicking like teeth tapping against glass. The stream died with a flat tone. Jo's phone lit up in the dark. One text from Miles. It only said, "Home." The church basement smelled of wet stone and hymnals gone soft with age. Jo carried a kerosene lantern, its flame guttering in the draft that always seemed to rise from the floor. Down here, the town kept its history the way some families kept skeletons, in a locked cabinet beneath a quilt of dust. The sheriff's key turned heavy in the lock, and inside lay the ledger, thick, leather-bound, its spine scarred from near a century of use. Jo set it on the folding table. The book creaked as if it resented being opened. Pages were crowded with cramped handwriting, ink darkened by decades. The first entries dated 1927, names of the missing, places of breach and terse notes underlined twice. Mirror covered too late. Salt line broken. Elk seen in orchard. Farther in, the words shifted tone. The scribes, pastors, deputies, grandmothers wrote of gifts left in the ditch and the mile choosing lures. The phrase repeated in margins, always with the same warning underline. The mile chooses, not the people. Jo's hands shook as she flipped closer to the present. Her own brother's name was there, Caleb Moran, entry 2011. The note read only, answering voice, taken swift. She pressed her palm flat as if she could cover his absence with skin. Sheriff Mitchell leaned over her shoulder. "You see it now," he said quietly. "The offering. The glass isn't trash, it's bait. The ditch keeps what it wants until it's set right. So if Miles took it, then he brought it into town, he gave them claim. The plan was forming even as he spoke. They would have to get the shard back, return it to the ditch, and lay down the right of reversal. Write the offering, the older entries called it. Jo copied the lines onto a scrap of paper, her pen trembling. Words of warning, words of binding. She told herself she'd remember every syllable, but she needed them written in case her own memory bent. She turned the next page and froze. The ledger was open to tonight's date. The ink shone wet in the lantern light. Names already written. Miles Donovan, Jo Moran, Sheriff Robert Mitchell. Her breath caught. The last line dripped black across the parchment. Glass retrieved. Offering refused. The mile answers. By dawn, Pine Harbor felt hollowed. Windows stayed dark even when the sun came up, the hum still lingering in the power lines like a memory of thunder. Sheriff Mitchell sent Jo with Darla Reyes and F. Henley. the oldest man in town who still walked the roads after dark to the county line. The plan was simple: get far enough out that radios worked, call for counsel beyond Pine Harbor's bloodline. The Red Cedar elders had weathered things older than the mile, though they rarely spoke of it. They drove with the windows up, clutching his tobacco pouch like a rosary. The road out was slick with dew, the corn bowing in tired rows. For the first 5 miles, static chewed the sheriff's radio, but just before the sign that read leaving Pine County, the channel cleared. Red Cedar Station, this is Harbor 3 requesting counsel. Darla's voice was crisp, but Joe saw the tension in her jaw. The reply came slow, a graveled baritone Joe remembered from powwows her father once took her to. "You've woken the mile again. That's not counsel you want, that's confession." They met the elder at the pull-off where the pavement cracked into gravel. He came alone, wrapped in a jacket stitched with thunderbirds, eyes dark and sharp. Tipped his cap, murmured, "Didn't think you'd come." "I shouldn't have," the elder said, "but you dragged Glass into town, and you let the elk see you." Joe stepped forward, clutching the scrap of copied ledger notes. "Tell me its name, please, if we know it." The elder's stare cut her down. "Do not ask for what can bind you. A name is not a weapon, it's a tether, and once you carry it, it carries you." He reached inside his jacket. The object he pulled out was small, tarnished silver, hung on a frayed leather cord, a bell no bigger than a walnut, etched with lines that looked like antlers. Joe felt the air change when he set it in her palm. Cold surged up her arm. "Do not ring it unless you mean to pay," the elder said. "If you ring it, you're agreeing to their cost, and their cost is never what you think it is." Joe's mouth went dry. "What cost?" The elder only turned back toward Red Cedar Land, shoulders stiff, voice flat. "You'll know if you call them." Night fell early that evening, clouds low and bruised, holding in the hum like a lid on a pot. Joe and the others set their patrol on Old Mill Road, the stretch locals still called the Mile. Salt streaked the center line. Lanterns hung from the truck mirrors, throwing weak light that the corn seemed to drink in. They walked in diamond formation, Joe at point, Darla on her right, Henley steady as oak on the left, and Deputy Nash bringing up the rear. Each carried iron tools, silver rounds, and the old words on slips of paper. The first voice came soft, just beyond the ditch. "Joe, Joe, it's me, it's Casey." Her throat closed. Casey had been gone 6 years, vanished one October after swearing he'd prove the rules wrong. Everyone told her he was gone for good, that even his bones were past finding. But the voice in the corn, God, it had the exact lilt of her brother, the drawl on her name. "I found your glove," the voice whispered. "The one you lost under the bleachers, remember?" Joe stumbled. Nobody alive should have known that. Darla's hand clamped her shoulder. "Don't listen, keep eyes front." The formation held, boots on asphalt, salt dust kicking up under each step. But then came the second voice from the other side of the road, a woman's, cracked with age. "Nash, baby boy, it's Mama." The deputy froze. His light swung wide toward the rose. His mother had been dead 2 years. Everyone in town knew it. But the voice carried every detail, the rasp of cigarettes, the tremor in her laugh. "I cooked beans," the corn whispered. "Your favorite, come sit." "Don't," Darla hissed. "Stay in the line." Nash's breath came ragged. He raised his gun like a man in a dream, not aiming at anything, just holding on. "Please, honey," the voice begged. "Don't leave me alone here." He broke, one step off the asphalt, then another. Joe shouted his name, but the corn seemed to swallow the sound. Nash walked between 2 stalks that never swayed, never moved to make way. And then he was gone. No rustle, no scream, No trace but the echo of his mother's voice fading into the hum. By midnight the hum was no longer background, it was the air itself. It drummed through the asphalt, made every filling in Joe's teeth ache, rattled windows 3 streets away. The blacktop began to shimmer, not with water but with the slow rise and fall of something alive beneath it, like breath. F. Henley carried 2 burlap sacks, one of flour, one of ash. He moved with the care of a man walking a minefield, shaking the mixture in thin white-gray lines. A grid began to take shape across Old Mill Road, a pattern the ledger called the backward walk. Each square meant a place to retreat step by step without ever turning your back. "Hold the lanes," F muttered, voice raw with age. "They hate order. Grids hurt them." Darla checked her watch, jaw locked. "We've got 60 minutes. After that the pitch will peak. We won't hear ourselves think." She knelt by the cruiser, duct-taping the countdown clock to the hood so every eye could see. Its red digits ticked loud in the still night. 59:59, 59:58. Joe helped scatter the last of the ash, her fingers numb from the cold bite in the October wind. The road looked like a checkerboard made for giants. If it worked, the town might hold. If it didn't, she tried not to finish the thought. The hum deepened, pulling the corn with it. Rows leaned in waves, bending and swaying though no storm touched them. Light poles along the road blinked, buzzed, and went dark, leaving only lantern glow. Then silence dropped, sharp as a slammed door. The corn stilled. The hum steadied into one endless note, and from the far end of the mile it came. The pale elk stepped onto the blacktop, its hooves leaving no mark but its weight bending the asphalt like warm tar. Antlers scraped at nothing, higher than the telephone wires. Its eyes glowed like drowned moons, and when it lifted its head, it did not look at the patrol. It looked toward town. By the second night, the danger no longer stopped at the edge of the asphalt. It seeped under doors, through shutters, and into the marrow of Pine Harbor. Families had covered their mirrors with sheets, but now the cloth bulged outward, as if the glass underneath were pushing to breathe. Old photographs, wedding portraits, school pictures, faded Polaroids, hung backwards on walls, but their paper warped, and faint outlines bled through in reverse. In more than one house, faces in the photos had inverted, smiles downturned, eyes like hollow wells. At the Harper place on Locust Street, a boy of 7 crouched beside the clawfoot tub, his ear tilted to the drain. "Mama, it's Uncle Luke," he whispered. "He says the water's warm down there." His mother found him with both hands pressed to the rusted grate, whispering back. She yanked him away just as the pipes gave a single wet click like a throat clearing. Word spread fast. Radios cracked with overlapping calls. "My baby girl says the mirror's breathing. Photographs are backwards, I can't. Something's knocking from under the sink." Sheriff Mitchell ordered all households into community lockdown. The town hall filled with the sound of prayer, sobbing, and the scrape of chairs shoved against doors. Salt lines thickened into drifts. Children were kept from windows, hands clamped over ears. Joe sat against the far wall, knees pulled to her chest, feeling the ledger's copied page in her coat and the weight of the silver bell in her pocket. She hadn't told anyone she carried it, not even Darla. It pulsed cold against her thigh like it knew more than she did. Outside, the hum rose, sinking with the last failing bulbs of the street lamps. Each flicker stretched longer than the last. And then, clear in the stillness of the hall, the bell rang. One sharp silver note, ringing muffled through fabric, though Joe's hands had never touched it. The crowd fell silent. Joe froze. The bell had chosen to speak first. They found him just after midnight, parked at the bend where the asphalt narrows between two fields. The patrol headlights washed over him. Miles Donovan crouched on the shoulder like he'd been waiting hours, grinning as if nothing were wrong. But the grin was too wide. His lips stretched past what skin should allow, and the dimples carved so deep they looked like slits. In his palm, gleaming under the high beams, lay the shard of blue glass. It pulsed faintly, catching no light but making its own. "Evening," Miles said. His voice was steady, but his teeth clicked faintly like words forced through someone else's mouth. "Took you long enough." Darla raised her rifle. "Step onto the truck bed, now." Miles chuckled, turning the glass slowly in his hand. "Metal." He shook his head. "Can't, they won't let me, not if I want to keep him close." Joe's chest locked tight. "Who?" "Your brother." Miles tilted his head, the grin never faltering. "Casey's waiting. I saw him in the rows. He knows your glove, Joe. He knows what you whispered before the bleachers fell." Her blood went cold. No one alive should have known those words. F spat into the dirt. That ain't him speaking. But Miles only rocked on his heels, eyes glimmering with the same drowned lake depth she'd seen in the Elk. "I can take you to him. You only have to follow." The glass pulsed. The hum returned, crawling up from the blacktop like steam. And then Darla noticed it first. Sheriff, his shadow. They all looked. The moon hung clean and high, casting every figure long across the road. But Miles's shadow wasn't where it should be. It didn't stretch toward the ditch or across the shoulder. It pointed backward, straight into the corn. And at midnight the rows leaned open for it. The ledger had been clear. If the mile opened, you walked it backward. No turning, no running, no breaking the grid. Eyes front, steps measured, salt crunching with each heel to toe. Joe took point. Her breath clouded in the cold air, lantern shaking in her hand. The others followed, F muttering the binding psalms under his breath, Darla counting their steps aloud to keep rhythm. Even Miles, still grinning that wrong grin, trailed at the edge of the light, shadow always tugging toward the corn. The road seemed endless. Every backward step brought another stretch of asphalt shimmering like heat over summer tar. The hum pulsed under their feet, syncing with their heartbeats until Joe couldn't tell which was which. In the ditch, the pale elk walked parallel, silent as falling snow. Its antlers snagged stars, its eyes drowned everything else. It never crossed the salt lines, but it never lagged behind either. "Keep pace," Darla barked. "Grid holds if no one breaks." No one dared look back. Joe clenched the silver bell in her fist so tight the edges dug into skin. The elder's words burned in her ears. "Do not ring it unless you mean to pay." She hadn't rung it. She hadn't even let it move. And still, white fire flared in her palm. The bell seared like iron in a forge, branding its etch into her flesh. She bit her lip to keep from crying out, the taste of blood hot in her mouth. Then inside her head, the demand rose. Not words from outside, not whispers from the corn. This voice came from the bell itself, sharp and metallic. A name, a year, or a door. The choice pulsed with every throb of pain. A name, someone offered up. A year, time surrendered. A door, an opening with no promise of what came through. Joe staggered, nearly breaking the line. Darla caught her elbow, hissed, "Don't falter." But the bell burned hotter, demanding its cost. They reached the ditch at the curve, the place where Joe's father used to slow the truck and mutter a prayer under his breath. The salt lines here were worn thin, scattered by wind and rain. The ditch yawned black, its water stagnant, its weeds bent flat as if something had pressed them down from below. Miles crouched at the edge, still clutching the shard. His grin had gone slack, his skin slick with sweat. "Here," he said hoarsely. We put it back, right? That's what you wanted. We set it down and walk away. Jo held her lantern low, the copied ledger notes trembling in her other hand. She spoke the words as F had taught her, measured, exact, then nodded for Miles to place the glass. He dropped it onto the mud. For a moment, silence. The shard pulsed once like a heartbeat. Then the ditch heaved. The mud spat the glass back up, landing in the road at Joe's boots. F swore. Darla raised her rifle, though there was nothing to shoot. It won't take it, Joe whispered. The hum rose into a shrill keen, the kind that made teeth buzz and eyes water. Miles staggered, clutching his gut. His mouth wrenched open in a howl, except no sound came. Instead, something clear and bright spilled out. Not vomit, not bile. Pebbles of light, small and round, clattering on the asphalt like marbles. Each one glowed faintly like fragments of stars. Hooks, F rasped. They fed him the hooks. Miles gagged again, retching more of the shining stones until his palms overflowed. His eyes rolled white, his grin splitting bloody at the corners. Jo couldn't move. Her ears rang with the ditch's rejection, her vision blurred by the glow scattered across the mile. And then through the shriek and the hum, another voice broke in, clear, close, as if whispered against her ear. Casey. Don't fix the ditch, Jo. Her breath caught. Fix me. The ditch seethed, the light pebbles scattering across the asphalt like spilled teeth. Miles convulsed, hands clutching the glowing fragments as if they belonged inside him. Darla barked orders no one obeyed, her voice breaking against the hum. Joe's palm still burned with the silver bell. Every pulse of pain matched the whisper she couldn't ignore, a name, a year, or a door. But Casey's voice cut sharper, clearer than anything else. Fix me. Her mind spun through the ledger lines, through the warnings F had muttered since childhood. The mile never gave freely. It collected, it stored, it waited. The ditch wasn't hungry, it was a ledger itself, and every broken rule left a debt. The hum pressed against her skull. She clamped the bell in both hands, felt the etching bite deeper, and whispered, "Take mine." The words were barely formed before the bell flared white-hot. Jo screamed and swung her hand down, ringing it once. The sound wasn't silver and sweet. It was raw, jagged, tearing the night in two. A note that belonged to no church, no instrument, no human hand, and then silence. The hum cut off like a severed wire. The corn stilled. The ditch lay flat and black, its surface unbroken. Something moved at the far end of the road, a figure, thin and staggering, stepping out from the rows. Casey, his face pale but whole, his eyes wide with fear and hope both. He stumbled forward, bare feet slapping the blacktop. Jo tried to shout his name. Her chest heaved, her lips formed the word. But nothing came, not even a rasp. Casey reached her, clutched her arms, trembling with life. Tears ran down his cheeks, and when he tried to speak, only silence fell. His mouth moved without sound, mute. Darla swore under her breath, staring at Jo. What did you trade? Jo's throat worked uselessly. She opened her mouth again, desperate, but no sound would ever come. The bell cooled in her palm, blackened. Its etching burned away. And the mile had been paid. The silence after the bell felt deeper than night itself. For the first time in days, the power lines hung still, carrying nothing. The ditch lay flat, no hum beneath it, only the sound of breathing, ragged, human, terrified. Then the elk moved. It stood at the far end of the mile, taller than the light poles, its antlers tangling with stars. For hours it had watched without blinking, its eyes like drowned moons fixed on Pine Harbor. But now, at last, it dipped its head, not in surrender, not in mercy. In acknowledgement. The debt had been paid. Darla raised her rifle, shoulders squared. She pulled the trigger once and the blessed silver round cracked skyward, bursting like pale lightning. The echo rolled down the cornfields, and with it the air shifted. The rows of corn exhaled at once, bending back into place as if an invisible hand had released them. The fields straightened, the stalks rustled with plain wind again, and the breath of the mile went quiet. In town, blankets dropped limp over mirrors. Sheets no longer bulged. Photographs sagged against walls, faces restored, smiles crooked but human. The bath drain stilled, holding only the faint smell of rust and water. Joe clutched Casey against her, his weight real and trembling, though neither of them could speak. His tears wet her shoulder, her own fell soundlessly. Then a thud pulled every eye back to the road. Miles. His body collapsed like a marionette with its strings cut, knees cracking against the asphalt. The shard of blue glass rolled from his slack palm, its light guttering out. For a heartbeat, there was only the limp weight of him. Then his chest bulged once, wrong, as if something pressed up from beneath his ribs. His mouth opened and a wet clicking spilled out, louder than before. Something still inside him clawed for the ditch, and his body began to drag itself across the asphalt, boneless, inching toward the weeds. Morning came brittle and gray. The town gathered in the church basement, every face worn thin, eyes hollow from nights of watching. The ledger lay open on the folding table, the lantern light spilling over its scarred spine. Joe turned the pages with trembling hands. Where last night's entry had glistened fresh, another had already written itself beneath it, ink still tacky, letters sharp and merciless. A new line, a new rule. Do not let the mile name you. The handwriting was unlike the neat scrawl of pastors or sheriffs who'd kept the record before. This hand was jagged, crooked, as though pressed by something that had never held a pen. The words cut deeper than any of the others, the ink sinking through the page to stain the wood beneath. F crossed himself. It isn't done. Ledger's never signed itself twice. On a cot in the corner, Miles stirred. His body was intact, his eyes open, but the man inside was gone. His grin was slack, his gaze fogged. He breathed, but each exhale clicked, shallow and wet. Darla muttered, alive but hollow. Nobody went near him. Joe sat beside Casey, who hadn't spoken since he'd stumbled back from the corn. His lips moved soundlessly, frustration written across his face. Finally, he snatched a diner napkin from the table and scribbled with F's pen. He pushed it into Joe's hand. The words made her stomach drop. You paid too much. Her throat worked, but no voice came. She could only clutch his note and fight the burn behind her eyes. That was when she noticed the weight was gone from her pocket. The bell. Her hand clawed through the lining, searching every fold of her coat. Nothing. The silver bell, blackened by her bargain, was missing. By winter, Pine Harbor had a new name on the maps, Ash Hollow. A polite fiction, a way to write the mile into brochures without scaring off tourists or attracting reporters. The council passed what they called an ordinance, but everyone in town knew what it really was, scripture disguised as law. Copies were stapled to utility poles, tacked to the notice board outside Hanson's diner, even slid into motel drawers where Gideon Bibles used to rest. The paper bore the town seal, but the words were older than ink. 1. Do not leave the asphalt after sundown. 2. Do not answer voices from the fields. 3. Do not take what was not given. 4. Do not touch the glass. 5. Do not look at the elk. 6. Do not let the mile name you. The last rule still carried the smell of fresh ink. Nobody asked who had written it. In the weeks after, mirrors stayed covered. Salt stains never scrubbed off porches. At night, power lines still groaned though no storm touched them. And every dawn, just as the frost lifted, the elk appeared at the far end of the mile. It stood motionless, antlers tangled in pale light, eyes like lakes without bottom. When the sun rose high enough, it turned its head, not away but down, an animal bow that was not surrender but recognition. In the diner, Jo worked the counter in silence. Her voice was gone for good, but her presence was steady, her eyes sharper than ever. On the wall by the door, she taped a typed card so every customer, local or stranger, would see it before leaving. The rules save lives. The bell was never found.